Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm back in the Data Den live for the first time in goodness knows how long with a new format, which I can't wait to tell you about. Going forward, it's going to be once a month. I'm going to have a panel of people and we're going to talk about a different topic each month. You can come along with your questions, get involved, and we'll answer them. And I thought it would be really good to start today with jobs and data, because it is a hot topic right now and there's a lot going out there. But, you know, what kind of job should you go for? What are the best opportunities? Is there a particular job role that's in demand? Well, you know, the only thing we can do is ask a panel of experts. And guess what? I just happen to have a few of them for you. So let me bring them on for you. Hello, gentlemen.
Hi, Susan.
Good evening. Welcome to the Data Den. Thank you for joining. Let me see. So I'll just go around, and if you can introduce yourself, say where you're working, how long you've been in the industry, and then we'll get cracking from there. So Kyle, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so my name's Kyle Winterbottom. I'm the founder of a company called Orbition Group. We're a data and analytics talent solutions business headquartered in the UK, but we do work across the UK, Europe, and the USA.
Thanks very much. Pete, how about you?
Hi, so Pete Petrella. I'm part of a global organization called Aileron, and I run two of our businesses. One is called Talent Rise and the other called Viaduct, and both are focused on emerging companies and emerging fields that are, technology driven, data and analytics driven. And we do executive search and professional search as well.
Fantastic. And then, hang on, I've moved my screen so everyone's jiggled around. Jez, you're next.
Hi, Susan. So I'm Jez Clark. I'm the founder and CEO of Eden Smith Group. Very similar to Carl, actually. So we're a data and analytics staffing specialist. Got a few parts to the business, which is obviously all of the recruitment across data management and architecture, engineering, science, BI and analytics. We're also running consulting now with some projects across all of those areas. And we run an education and training program where we bring master's data science students and hopefully connect them up and accelerate academic impact into industry.
Brilliant. And last but definitely not least, Rich.
Hey, I'm Rich Wilson. I'm the CEO and founder of Gig.ai. We're a little bit different. We're a talent marketplace, or we're various talent marketplaces which are AI driven, that help either small to medium companies find specific tech talent, or large enterprises that actually try and look internally for tech talent before they go externally. So different ways to find talent, but very much from a tech solution standpoint.
Brilliant. So I was going to bring this up later, but since Scott Taylor, the data whisperer, has already messaged that it's a sausage fest, that's something we've been talking about a lot at the moment with other things that are going on. Genuinely, I couldn't think of any females in the industry, and I know loads in procurement and recruitment, but I couldn't think in the data world. So is this representative of what it's like in the industry?
I think it's a very interesting point, Susan, right? Mm-hmm. The diversity, gender diversity is massive on every business's agenda at the moment. It's always been a problem in technology. And I think, to be honest, some people are cross-training from technology into the world of data. Obviously, there hasn't been much change. But fortunately, from what I've seen from the universities of people coming through into industry, there's a better mix. So I'm seeing more of a half-half, which is good.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, a certain generation and above. It just wasn't really an option for me, I don't think, very much when I was at uni, but look at me now. So let's get started with what is the market like right now, and where are the hot jobs? What areas of data / tech are really hot right now?
All right, I'll go for that. So I think to be honest with you, I mean, the data engineering landscape over the last 2 or 3 years has kind of completely blown up, right? I think that's been, data science being the sexiest job of the 21st century until most businesses realized that they didn't have the infrastructure to support doing data science all that well. So now you're kind of in this realm where many businesses are on that train looking for that. So that's where I see, the biggest spike and probably the biggest demand, to be honest.
I totally agree with Carl there, Susan. I think also we need to consider what companies have been doing over the last 10, 15 years. Carl's just alluded to the data science being the sexiest job, and absolutely it was. You've seen millions of investment going into building models and God knows what else, but then suddenly realizing that, as you will know more than anybody, data quality is rubbish, data literacy is bad, data culture is low, data management, there's no infrastructure. So actually there's a bit of a reverse on that. So people are now sorting out the data and engineering it correctly so that we can get the best insights. And that obviously drives the talent market in a massive way.
Yeah, I think there's been a resurgence as well around the governance,
governance
piece as well, for that reason. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And Pete, what's it like over in North America?
What's interesting is all technology related jobs are very hot right now. So all companies are realizing how much they need, data science, data engineering, software engineering, management in general, in terms of these groups within every industry. So almost every company is becoming a tech company in some capacity. So the demand is extremely high. The talent is extremely limited. And, we're seeing it from all angles. It's very talent driven or candidate driven in terms of the marketplace. Every candidate who has certain skill sets in technology has options. Everyone, and even like the mid levels to the high levels, there's just not enough people with that kind of experience. Some of the newer programs coming out of the universities have lent towards people getting in, worlds like data or cybersecurity or other technology driven worlds, where in the past they haven't. So people with 10, 15, 20 years experience don't typically have the skill set to do the things that are necessary in a modern tech type of world. So there's a huge gap there in experienced individuals who can not only do the job, but also manage people and have a leadership stake in an organization. So it's just been very challenging for companies to find the right talent in that way.
Interesting. And Rich, do you see trends on with your platform and what you're doing?
Yeah, I suppose twofold. So I'm also on the board of the Data Lab. So I'm on the board of the which is Scotland Centre for AI and Data, and so really the job of the Data Lab is to bring more data and AI jobs to Scotland, right? By bringing more people into, through university, through apprenticeships, through different schemes to train them, right? So we're always, we're doing 250 master's students every year. It's always oversubscribed. So in terms of the amount of people coming in through PhD and master programs is, compared to where it was even 3 years ago, is pretty much double, because the demand is there, right? And I think that's, I agree what Kyle and Jez said. One of the things, so I spent 3 years after I left the recruitment industry. I spent 3 years with Gartner, and I worked closely with chief data officers at FTSE 100 and Fortune 500 companies. And, you just look at how that role's elevated over the last few years. So most CDOs aren't in the CIO's office anymore. They're straight to the CEO. And then they're getting a lot of money to then hire data analysts, data scientists, data engineers. And then that becomes as a driver of revenue, right? And it all comes back down to money, right? Because that function is then seen as a driver to either reduce cost or create new revenue, which then creates, the demand for data science. But there is definitely that skills gap, right? What Jez was saying, you've got more senior people with 10, 15, 20 years, and then you've got the kind of coming into a market now that's hot. But there is definitely then a gap kind of creating. I see that all the time.
Lisa's just made a really good comment, and actually I was going to just ask something along the same lines, which is she's saying companies need support in writing better job descriptions, but also do they expect too much from one role as well.
What a great point. Do you know, as part, I think, you know, whenever there's a skills gap, and at the moment, so we did we did a presentation at Big Data London this year, and you know, from the research we did, and it's interesting that Richard said refer to Gartner as well. Part of Gartner's research was part of ours for that presentation. Now we've seen that we've got the biggest shortfall in talent of 15 years, and also the biggest demand in the last 15 years. And you have, because of the post-pandemic and the pandemic itself, changing operating models of businesses, right? So
Yeah.
people aren't going to move around until they're comfortable with what people are going to, what businesses are going to do. So in our view, you know, we have to just stop reverting to automatic go-to recruitment. And, you know, as a recruitment owner, it's quite an interesting thing to say, really, because of the irony. But actually, businesses need to talk about succession planning, internal mobility, training, and all part of that, and how they link up in organizational design is how people contribute in their role and their function. And so many companies make a mistake when they're writing job descriptions that they go out, and because of the ton of innovation there is out at the moment with you know, let's call it a data whatever, they think of all these amazing names, they write these role profiles which are so far, you know, out of scope with what's aligned with actually what the talent pool has to offer. And that's where we have to slow down to speed up, right? We've got to, as consultants, as an experts in this industry, these people on this call, you know, we've got to guide businesses and help them actually align their job profiles. And interestingly, about the data market, and not like in technology, many of the data functions use the same set of technical skills. And if you're a technology recruiter by heart, like I was for 25 years, the last 6 years of Only Eden Smith has really taught me that you have to understand the function. And that's the consulting element that we have to give to businesses and help them write the right role profiles to attract the right people.
I guess it's managing expectations as well of what
Absolutely.
you can actually get. Otherwise, you know, they blame the recruiter, but it's actually, it's not, you know, it's their unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of a disparity, Susan, between often the people that are responsible for making those hiring decisions and the people that facilitate the hiring of and attracting of talent. You know, so the people that really have the knowledge of how to best position a role and what value means to them and their data office, as it were, is, you know, they've got that knowledge, but the people facilitating...
HR's got a template and you have to fill it in.
Well, exactly right. And then you end up with a shopping list of technological requirements, and there's never anything in there about, you know, why this role might be interesting or why should you join our business as opposed to one of the other 30, 40, 50 potential options you've got, right? So we do a lot of re-engineering, should I say, of job descriptions for the clients that we work with, because, you know, look, that list of technological skills, you can go and find that on a CV, but they don't really care about that, right? So, you know, expectations are often too long and too, you know, too deep in terms of what they expect, but ultimately they're also not doing themselves any favors, in my opinion, because they don't position the role. You know, there's no kind of compelling narrative around them as a proposition.
Carl's hit the nail on the head there. You know, it's very easy to make a role profile of just skills, but, you know, data people tend to want to know where the business is at, why it's actually trying to become data enabled. You know, if they don't understand that on a role profile, they actually won't engage a lot of the time.
Yeah.
A lot of the people we're seeing here in the US want to work for companies where they can make a difference as well, not just, you know, having compensation be something that's important, but also, you know, the mission of the company, the values of the company, the vision, all of that stuff is becoming much more important when people are selecting where they're going to work. And, you know, a lot of the individuals with these types of skills have, like I mentioned earlier, multiple options. So they're getting calls from recruiters or companies all the time to join. It's the value proposition or the, you know, the mission, vision, and values overall are becoming much more interesting to people, and really where the job description, to your guys' points, is where they should focus in, you know, showing those, you know, showing what the mission is, showing what the values are, that type of stuff.
We've got a question here from Samir, and So he's asking about the job market for procurement and spend analytics professionals, which is quite interesting because I kind of straddle those two worlds and I don't really know where that role actually sits. Does it sit on the data side? Do you see that, or is it might be driven more by procurement, in which case you don't even get to see that these jobs are even out there?
Good
Do you ever
question.
see any roles like that?
Well, I think so. As suppliers, it's important to understand what the supply chain is. So for us, many of us will, there's kind of three real ways in, right? So there's in through HR, typically for perm or any kind of workforce re-engineering consultancy. There's procurement for contracting and consulting and projects. And then there's obviously the direct line contact, which can muddle the area with both. So I haven't yet come across people procuring specifically for data and analytics. If it's in a global procurement area, that it's one segment of a larger role. That's my experience so far. So
opportunities there for you guys.
I've seen both. I've seen both, depending on the size of the company. You know, when again, this is a kind of area that Gartner get involved in quite a bit, and and certain large enterprises like large services companies or large retail or investment banks would have within procurement have some sort of data set, right? So have some sort of data scientist, probably not a data scientist though, really someone whose job is to make sure that they're managing spend. But I think a lot of the time what they'll do is they'll use a third party, right? So it's like, again, going back to Gartner, we would have teams of consultants, procurement people, procurement specialists. Under them, there would be teams of data analysts that would then collect all the data and then benchmark it and provide the benchmark data back to that company. So I think I would say that I would rarely, it does happen that, again, they have that within procurement function, but I think usually you would see that role for an advisory or a procurement specialist firm that they would then buy to then look at, hey, is that contract, above, benchmark, low benchmark, what point should we negotiate, what parts of the contract do we see? So, definitely, it's definitely a role, but probably more in the third party consultancy side than it would be direct.
Yeah. We will see in the large consultancies like Rich referring to actually a category manager, right?
Yeah.
So the category managers will often pick up a certain part of. I just haven't seen it outside of a very large global kind of corporate, just where they're overrun with work.
Yeah. So I've taken on a new client and they're growing their team and they were looking for like analyst type people. And the choice was between a pure data professional and somebody who had more procurement background. And they were swaying towards more the procurement backgrounds just because of the knowledge in that space. But I think like the stuff that I'm doing, I think there's a huge gap in that area where you either have people who are buying and category managing, or you have pure data analysts, etc. And you need something that's a little bit in the middle.
I think the problem with a lot of this, Susan, and this is going to sound like a bit of a palm off, but there's such complexity around this, right? Every single business is different, and even things like job titles and role definitions, everything is so undefined that it's almost impossible to say, yes, that exists and here is where it exists, because in one organization it will exist and in another organization it won't exist, and it comes down to the whole argument of centralized teams versus siloed or fragmented teams and all of that type of stuff. So I guess the visibility of how these teams are set up plays an important part in terms of actually if these roles are out there and the balance of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Jez, were you gonna
no
okay
no
I was just gonna say, so I've seen a huge change because my business is nearly 5 years old, and when I started out there were no such thing as BI analysts or analysts in within organizations. You went externally to get that kind of stuff, the majority. And like that, the new procurement analyst thing is quite new, I would say, and so it's still evolving. And actually, just in general, the scale and the amount of interest in like data cleaning and stuff, you know, I kind of expected it to kind of fizzle out, but it's gone the opposite way. You know, everybody's into like data quality now, which is great. And generating hopefully lots more jobs and things, but it was just always just never really thought of. It was always kind of swept under the carpet. So, you're gonna.
No, I was going to say, I think over the next 4 or 5 years, it's a bit like, so it reminds me when SAP kind of launched out there as this massive organization, blah, blah, blah. And then before you knew it, they had tons of different modules. And so over the course of 2 to 5 years, you had all of these different roles with the different modules. And it kind of makes me think of what we're seeing at the moment. I'm sure the other guys are seeing it as well, is the product ownership, the data product world building. You know, it's just another role where the people are seeing, you know, it starts broad and then they start to actually narrow it down and get the focus. And this is where the data product owner comes, because they want people and businesses or people to take ownership of specific things.
That's so confusing to me, because I used to work in marketing, on the marketing, sales and marketing. So, you know, I think of like product managers as something completely different.
Well, you know, this is it. There's IT product managers, right?
Yeah.
Now there's data product managers, there's data product owners, there's director of data products. So there's all of this sort of stuff happening, but it's a natural evolution of what's happening as an initiative for global transformation starts to happen. We're going to see that. We're going to see all sorts of different types of analysts. We've already seen 5 or 6 different types of data scientists. We'll see different types of machine learning people. And you know, it will happen in the data management and governance space as well. Like, you know, DQ analysts are massively in demand at the moment. So, you know, we just have to keep abreast of it. But what we don't want to do, and as advisors, I think as suppliers in the industry, what we have to do is guide and educate, because one side of the fence is exploding and advancing very, very quickly, but the talent pool isn't. And so we have to best position the people who are job seeking, and we have to best consult the customers who are trying to build teams at the same time. And there's obviously only a certain amount of us that can do that. and you know, and some people listen and some people don't, you know, that's the way it is. So
then what is, as Roberto was asking, what could be a good path to follow to be a good, a data scientist? It might not even be data scientist, but, you know, I would always say it's never too late to change your career path or learn, but, you know, do we need to be getting in at school age to kind of get them into being aware that this is a real career, this is an opportunity? And
absolutely, yeah. I mean, is anyone else on the call got children?
Yeah.
And I don't know about your children, how old they are, but I know that my daughter and my son are already starting to learn Python, right?
Wow.
And SQL is part of their
amazing.
IT initiative. Yeah. So it's crazy, isn't it? But
yeah,
you know, if you're good at maths and statistics and you know how to talk to people and you've got a bit of tech savvy about you, then what a great career that you could carve yourself out.
Here was me at school with the BBCs, and we thought it was cool being able to send messages to the other computers in the room.
I think in this point, I think, you know, twofold. So I'm involved with up, you know, in Scotland, there is definitely an issue where some schools do it, most schools don't, right? And there's a curriculum issue in Scotland.
Right.
So you know, what we've been doing, so we work with Scotland IS, which is a trade body for Scotland, and they're doing a session. They're doing, you know, letting people in the industry that have got tech companies, that have founded tech companies, to mentor computing science teachers. But, you know, once we've been doing that, it's the one thing that it scares me, right, in terms of the curriculum. It's like, it's, you know, obviously at school recently, but when I was, it's still the same stuff, right? And so I think being able to share, it's, you know, again, I don't know if it's a Scotland thing, but it's terrible in Scotland, right? And I think then there's the element of just being able to, you know, give, you know, more you know, inspiration to those coming through about these careers. Like when I came through, you know, I got into recruitment, as most people did. I fell into it, right? And then I fell into tech out of recruitment because I kind of had a passion for the tech side, and then I kind of managed to blag myself a job at Gartner and then became a tech specialist, right? So I think I never knew anything about this industry, right? I fell right into it.
Right.
I had done computing at standard grade, and you know, didn't learn anything. So I think there's the element of being able to try and inspire and actually share what those jobs are. You know, like 16, how many 16-year-olds know what a data scientist is? You know the possible money they could earn, you know, and the life they could have and work in some huge businesses if they're great at data science.
And get to
Very
solve
little.
all these problems and puzzles and, you know, actually have fun at work.
Yeah.
And then what you said
We're-
about the respawn is great. Sorry.
No, I was going to say we're involved in some kind of university programs and initiatives, right? And what gobsmacks me, and I've been asked to go in there for the last 3 or 4 years and do a bit of public speaking around, you know, the world of data and analytics in its entirety, because I think what you find naturally is that given the sheer demand in the industry, anyone that's doing computer science is probably just going to get sucked into our world, right? That's kind of probably a given. But there are programs out there where they're teaching these people, like, you know, the basics of analysis that could enter our industry, which is crazy to me. Then when I go in and speak to these, you know, groups of students that are really diverse in every sense of the word as well, which is, you know, another problem that we've got, but they don't even know that the data world exists. You know, it blows their mind that there's brands that they love, you know, and if you're here in Manchester, you know, you've got Boohoo, for example, right, where it's 80% female in that kind of lecture hall, and they all buy clothes off Boohoo. But, you know, for them trying to get their head around the fact that, you know, Boohoo are looking for analysts to analyze their data, and they don't even know that. So there needs to be more kind of done at an earlier age to open their eyes, and it doesn't have to necessarily be really techie people. It can be people that have the basic skills but are, you know, good communicators and, you know, bridge the gap and all of that type of stuff, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, just on an IT literacy level, I'm really surprised at the lack of like use of like Office 365, etc. I was managing some students on doing a contract job a few years ago, and I asked a girl to set up a calendar meeting with some people, and the next day she hadn't done it, and I was like, "Oh, have you done that?" And she's like, "Oh no, I don't know how to."
Wow.
I was like, "What?" But Jez, you also do a lot with young people and students as well, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, look, it started for us as a demand, really. The demand from the companies that were trying to build capability in data science 5 or 6 years ago was so high, and Matt and I, you know, we sort of said to each other, well, where are we going to start with this? So we went to the source to find out where they were being trained, and there's some great companies out there that have got really good models where they train students, then they put them out on site, they get work experience. But I think what we wanted to find was a bit more of a hybrid kind of program. So, you know, these days we take master's students who have got a dissertation to write for 3 months, and we put those students on site. And the idea really is that they get work experience, so the company has an opportunity to hire at the back of the dissertation period of 3 months. We can then feed back from industry, which I think is vital right now, back into the universities. So, you know, to change the program for the following year to accelerate the academic impact, because this is a problem. Often the universities are so far behind that, you know, by the time the students are graduated, they're coming out with skills that not so much not relevant, but they're not maybe as relevant as they should be. And I think that's really important. And, you know, how do we get these, what I would call bright minds of the future, up to speed so that they can land and actually add some value? And so, like, you know, like Carl does, he works with universities, and we do the same. And, you know, you can try and get them business ready, which I think is the key here. And we have to, as a collective, because not one organization can do that across the country, let alone Europe and the globe. How do we all kind of work together to make that happen? And we just have to keep working hard at it, I guess.
Yeah, well, Krista's saying that the problem with Schoolage is securing quality data science teachers. So that's also an issue within itself. So it's just a never-ending circle, really.
Well, it's interesting when you talk to program lecturers of certain universities. Now, I can tell you that, you know, someone like UCL has probably 8 different data science programs or cohorts just in one university, and obviously there are a lot, and the cohorts are almost double in the size each year. So, and also within the programs, they'll have such a mix. Like you mentioned, some people don't have the basics of, you know, the 365 Office Outlook and Office Suite, whatever, Microsoft products. But also some of these students are being taught like the entry level of engineering, the entry level data science, the entry level of data, and you think, well, they come out with knowing a little bit about a lot of things. Well, I'm not too sure whether that's the right way or the wrong way, but I think it obviously does need looking at based on where the demand is in the industry. And it's
Yeah,
kind of a bit reversed at the moment. We need to change that.
I did a degree in commerce, and I did that because it was nice and vague. And I thought, oh yeah, I'll know what I want to do when I graduate. And of course I didn't. So,
Who does?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but like I really didn't even have a direction. Like I couldn't even say, right, well, this degree will guide me in a direction. It was so generic that it just it didn't like it, I've never used Maslow's theory of motivation and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's it. None of us are self-actualized yet. And if you are, you're dead apparently. So yeah, there you go. We need to not make it sexy, but make it fun and interesting, I think.
I think it depends on the industry, because every industry has such a need right now. I mean, anything you look at in terms of student wise, where do they feel passion towards? Where do they want to work? Because you can apply your skills to almost any industry at this point. So to kind of focus in on some areas that you want to focus on, I think are really important for students to understand.
Well, interestingly about the data world as well is it's, as we all know, across every industry, every single size of organization, at every level. So it's such a mammoth to tackle for us. It's a big question to answer. It's not like it's just in retail or it's just in manufacturing. It's everywhere.
I'm seeing a lot of opportunities for a lot of people if they can, and actually maybe I never thought I'd be in data because I'm terrible with maths and statistics and numbers, and I found the whole thing hugely intimidating. But then I found an area that I absolutely love and I'm really good at. So it's about, I guess, showing all the different sides of data as well. It's not just all about running numbers and stats.
I used to work in professional sports in the business.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And a number of years ago, and everyone would always ask me, how do you get into professional sports? I was with a team, the Buffalo team in the National Football League. And I said, you have to get a skill set. They don't want somebody who's just interested in sports. They want someone who could be maybe a data scientist that could help them understand their data better and, how to use it. They want someone who's in finance or accounting. They want someone who's a good seller. We never looked for people who just wanted to be in professional sports and had a passion towards professional sports. We looked for people that had skills, business skills that could be translated into professional sports. So that's an important thing for students. I tell students that I talk to all the time is if you want to get into some of those sexy industries, get a skill set like data, and analytics or machine learning, because that's going to be utilized through every industry. And, as we talked about, every industry there is.
I think it's really important as well, because I do still think that the industry is a bit hung up on what I would call that, I call it the front end, right? The science behind analytics or advanced analytics and machine learning. I still think everyone's hung up on that. We work with a company, I don't know if you ever heard of a business called CILIP, right? It's the Chartered Institute of Librarians.
They might be the people that are, on the back of my book.
Right, there you go. Right, so CILIP is a great example of where there's a massive amount of people there with some amazing data skills. Right, I was at a seminar once, and I was surrounded by, I don't know, it was 200 or 300 people in a theatre, and suddenly myself and my colleague Nick, we realised these people were cataloguers, and actually their whole life was spent about managing master data and data, but just in a different way, right? What hadn't been articulated into a role. And we suddenly sat there and went, we're surrounded by data people here. But the interesting thing was that they didn't know it. And this is at the data management and governance end, right? Quality, privacy, protection, governance, compliance, yeah? That side of stuff, which actually is vital to getting any of this stuff right. So I think we have to change some of the language, certainly for the younger generation that's coming through who want a career in data, that it doesn't have to be you don't have to be an advanced mathematician to be amazing at data management or data governance. You're still playing an extremely important role. You don't have to be a developer or a programmer or a software engineer to understand data engineering. So that, I think these are really, really key things.
Great. And
sorry, I'm
when
on my
no, this is great. This is like so fascinating, and actually, you've really opened my eyes to the fact that we need to do more to target the young people. Maybe I do. I was thinking I don't need to be on TikTok, but maybe I do.
You should be, Susan. You'd be great.
Oh yeah.
I don't have the time.
Oh yes, you do.
Your lip syncs, your lip syncs, Susan, were made for TikTok. That's
absolutely.
Oh no, it's just one platform too many. But I think actually, the role of jobs in general is changing. When I graduated, I was from the family kind of expected to, get that job for life, whereas that's not the norm anymore. It's more, there are so many more options now. And with what you're doing, Rich, we don't even have to have like permanent jobs anymore. There are other options. So tell us a little bit about gigs.ai and what kind of you offer on there.
Yeah, no problem. So I obviously I spent 12 years. I worked for Allegiance Group. It's a $14 billion staffing company. I helped build the European side, and I was a contract recruiter, right? Big projects, but it was in essence we were providing non-permanent workers on digital and data transformation projects. Again, mainly with large banks. And then when I was at Gartner, I started seeing a trend of of the war for talent being a big thing. And this was obviously pre-COVID, about how finding the right skills at the right time is a big issue. There was a bigger trend in North America, not quite here yet, but North America, about using more talent platforms to outsource pieces of work. I started learning more and more about that. And the more I started learning about that, I thought, actually, if we look at the traditional contract market and how IR35 was causing some real challenges, and within that, I thought, well, surely instead of there's probably micro work. How do you kind of break work down into more outcome based? So instead of it being like we need a permanent person, actually sometimes you will, right? A lot of the time you will. But if you look at some projects, there's outcomes. So like the number one skill set in our platform is a Python developer, and it's usually small to medium based companies that need a Python development, in a project for a short period of time. And that was really the reason that we built it, was that there's a lot of projects failing because of talent. And when permanent and contract's not the solution, then what is the other option? You go to Accenture and you pay $2,500 a day for a graduate, right? Not many people want to do that anymore, and that's really we try to tap into that call it gig economy, but a big thing about where we get talent from, a lot of them are side giggers, right? And that's a big thing we see in the data world, is that a lot of those permies on their big salaries have side consultancies doing side projects, which we do a lot of. And then the other thing we see at the other side is that like 46% of Gen Zs coming through want to work freelance. They don't want to work perm jobs anymore. And I see that a lot with the data lab. We're bringing in MSc students in that really don't want to go in and do the traditional perm. They probably will fall into it. So that was a big reason why we why we kind of built that platform, to fill that kind of shorter, sharper demand. They're not 6-month contracts or 3 months even. They're usually short, sharp pieces of work to help projects not fail. That's really the premise for it.
I think you're absolutely spot on there, Rich. And also, I think there's a couple of things going on with that. So part of our consulting division was created as a result of exactly what you're talking about. So for the last couple of years, we've been running projects which are outcome based. But actually, I do wonder whether this is a good opportunity, because it's a bit of a, we got a new thing going on here on a global basis, that actually there's an opportunity to push service-based recruitment. you know, as opposed to the transactional way of working, right? I mean, I can tell you that at least 40% of what we have at the moment is on a retained basis to build a team on a fixed price with deliverables. You know, we give you X amount of hires, we trigger a payment, we got service levels to work to, where there are add-ons and other value adds around organizational design and role profile building and all that sort of stuff. And I think that this is where it needs to go, to give a bit more comfort that when you're an organization and you're desperately trying to transform, you've got to have some assurance and some comfort from a supplier when there's a talent war or a shortage of skills, and therefore put that responsibility and accountability onto the supplier itself. And I think the only way you can do that is be comfortable in who you're supplying. So for us, knowing our topic, knowing exactly what we can deliver, and then just concentrating on that and customer service, as opposed to jumping on the hamster wheel and, you know, bringing in new customers for the sake of it, working KPI driven, all of that sort of stuff, which has a place and has been servicing the industry for however many years, over 20 years, right? But I think we have an opportunity to change that. And I think we have to be fair, to show the value. And for the job seekers, it's great.
I would absolutely agree with you. And we're kind of shifting and transitioning into that model too, of going a bit deeper with clients versus trying to continuously acquire new logos. I mean, it's a huge mind shift for our company, because our leadership team traditionally has been here for a very long time, and they are. Sorry, Susan, we lost you for a minute.
My internet has completely died. I'm now on my phone on 4G.
Susan's on a mobile. On a 4G connection now. Serious.
That's it. Yeah. What did I miss?
Oh,
talk about a little bit of shifts in industry from our standpoint of how we work with employers who are changing the way that they have to look at their hiring, and how they hire and who they hire, and short-term projects versus permanent based employment. So it's very interesting. And for us, it's a lot of what the fellows were talking about here, and turning traditional mindsets of permanent positions and ways that we do the work that we do versus changing with the times, and people who are more comfortable doing very short stints for a lot of different companies versus working with one on a more permanent basis, and leadership who needs to understand that shift in mindset and be able to adjust to that, which has been a challenge here in the US. There's a traditional thought process when it comes to how people are employed, and that's changing dramatically.
And I think just to add to that, so I think some interesting trends we're going to see in how people work is going to be so we're going to see a rise in freelancers, right? I think in the US alone, there's 57 million freelancers right now. There's expected to be 80 million in 3 years. Because people at the start of their career and those at the latter parts of their career are deciding they want to get out the rat race and they want to go and have more flexibility. Then we're going to see we're then going to see the side gigging trend, which I think is something